Hello everyone, my name is Tanner. I'm going to be teaching y'all how to make an XLR cable today. First off, you're going to need a few tools, and I'll go through those now. So first off, you'll need some flush cutters and some wire strippers. You'll also need audio cable, which has 2 conductors and 1 ground. You'll need some solder, a soldering iron, heat gun, which will be used for your heat shrink. The XLRs, I have Neutrik connectors to the XLR connectors. You'll need 1 male and 1 female of those. And then finally, a cable tester. So first thing I'm gonna do is strip this wire back. And this wire is pretty tough. The one I'm using, it's the Mogami Quad Flex. Alright, and this is what the end of that cable is gonna look like. On mine, you have a ground going all the way around it. So that I'm just gonna pull off and twist that together. So that's gonna be your ground wire right there. And I also have 2 blue conductors and 2 white conductors, which I'm gonna be using white as the hot and blue as the cold. So the next step is to just prep this wire to be soldered. The way I'm gonna do that is by stripping the jacket off of the hot and cold wires, because you already have the ground and you just need the hot and cold. So this is what it looks like once you've stripped the ends off of the wire. And I'm gonna do that for both sides. So now both sides are similar and are stripped, and we're gonna twist the 2 conductors together and give it some tinning on the solder. So my clamp isn't too good. This is the clamp I have, so it'll have to work. I'm gonna go ahead and clamp up both of these sides. So what I'm doing here is twisting the cable at the ends, or the wire at the ends, so that it'll be easier to fit them together, and then you twist those 2 together. I'm gonna go ahead and do that for both sides. Alright, now all the wires are twisted together, it's time to tin them. So we're gonna make sure our soldering iron's hot, take our solder, and just go along the wire. For the ground wire, we can just do the end because we're gonna heat shrink the rest of the part. Okay, at this point I'm done tinning the wire, which as you can see is just putting a thin layer of solder on each of the components that you're going to be soldering in. The way a soldering iron works is it heats up to what I have mine at is 850 degrees, which is hot enough to burn this metal and melt it to make a strong connection. So the next step is going to be adding heat shrink to make our cables look neat. So we're going to put the heat shrink on and turn on our heat gun. What that's going to do is melt the heat shrink so it goes around the wire. So now we have the heat shrink on our wires, and this is what it looks like. Now it's time to solder them into the connectors. Alright, so here's my Neutrik connector. It comes in 4 parts. What we're going to make sure that we do is put the boot on before you solder anything. Because if you solder it without the boot on, you'll have to take off one of the sides of the connectors to put this on. So I'm going to clamp this down. I'm also going to clamp this side down, which will give me some rooms with my hands to work the solder as well as the soldering iron. So what I'm doing now is looking at the numbers on the XLR cable. There are 3 conductors on an XLR cable. So you're going to have 1, which is ground, 2, which is hot, 3, which is cold. So what I'm looking for is those 3 pins, which ones I should put what wire into. A good way to remember this is by saying 2 is hot, 3 is not. So that way you know 2 is the hot wire, 3 is the negative wire, and then 1 would be the ground wire. Now I have the wires situated on their correct pins. So it's time to use our soldering iron and solder to make those connections strong. So now we've soldered the wires onto the connector. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here's what it looks like. So you want to have enough solder so that you can't pull these out, and you also want them separated enough so they're not touching each other and shorting out. The only thing left to do on this side is to put on the 2 pieces that we were waiting to put on. And you just screw in this piece right here, and you have one end of the microphone cable complete. So now we're going to solder the other end. So you need to be careful when soldering female XLRs versus male XLRs, because on this one the ground pin is on the opposite side, which makes sense because you would want them to connect and the wires to line up. So that's why the ground wire is on the opposite side on the female XLR versus the male XLR. Now I've aligned my pins, the wires on the pins of the female XLR, so it's time to solder. I'm just waiting for my iron to heat up to the correct temperature. So now we're done working. The first thing always to do is turn off your soldering iron and unplug the soldering iron, because this is a dangerous tool and you want to be very careful with it. Now that we have this side, oh no, you know what I didn't do? I didn't put on the boot of the XLR. So we're gonna have to undo this. Alright, so we've put the boot back on and we're gonna resolder just a little bit to make sure these connections are strong and won't come apart. So again, now that we're done, we're gonna turn off the soldering iron and unplug it. I'll show you up close. This is what the other side looks like. So we got some strong connections that are not coming undone. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna put on this plastic piece, I'm not sure what it's called, finally put on the front of the XLR. So now you have both ends of the XLR, which can plug into each other if you want, but we're gonna test, make sure that we made this cable correctly. So on this device, if all three line up, those green lights should line up with what pin we're testing. So here we go, green light, green light, green light. So that means our cable is good. My name's Tanner Carlson. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in for the next one. Thank you guys.